Okay, so we've resumed the stream. Now I've got to do all the setup tasks over. But, okay. So the new stream link is this. So people who want to watch on YouTube, here's the new YouTube link. Okay, so I need to go open the new YouTube link after I change a bunch of stuff. Oh gosh, slow mode 10 seconds. Turn off live reactions, save. We're gonna pause this. We're gonna pop out the new top chat. Me and my baby were down in the tramway. We're all going crazy, buck jumping and having fun. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. So, okay, thank you to everybody who's joining me in the new stream. We're going to be reading Moby Dick, Chapter 53, a.k.a. The Gam. The Gam. So let's get going. I need to repost the what we're reading link for the viewers on YouTube. And then we will jump right on in. What we're reading. Singing does not break the YouTube music search thing. Time skip worked like a charm. I'm so glad. Hey, we got another tip rolling in. Let's see who it's from. Wandering Mask tipping 5. Woo! That gets us 4 away from the next face camera expansion milestone, who says, wishing you all the best. May the stressful times pass you by as smoothly as possible and bring a better future. Yeah, I will say one thing I really appreciate is, like, my daughter is not really involved with any of the work to set up for or plan for the wedding. And so, like, when I'm, like, trying to explain, like, okay, I know everything's really stressful right now and everybody's really stressed out, but, like, after we get through this, the back half of September is going to be great. Like, my kid's like, yeah, that's really obvious. And I'm like, okay, good. You don't need to be, like, reminded. And she's like, no, I'm fine. You guys are the ones freaking out. And I'm like, yeah, because we're the ones doing all the work. So, okay. Okay. Here we go. Let's just jump right on in. Moby Dick by Herman Melville, or The Whale by Herman Melville. Chapter 53. The Game! The ostensible reason why Ahab did not go on board of the whaler we had spoken was this. The wind and sea betokened storms. But even had this not been the case, he would not, after all, perhaps, have boarded her, judging by his subsequent conduct on similar occasions. If so, it had been that, by the process of hailing, he had obtained a negative answer to the question he put. For, as it eventually turned out, he cared not to consort even for 5 minutes with any stranger captain, except he could contribute some of that information so absorbingly sought. But all this might remain inadequately estimated were not something said here of the peculiar usages of whaling vessels when meeting each other in foreign seas, and especially on a common cruising ground. If 2 strangers crossing the Pine Barrens in New York State, or or the equally desolate Salisbury Plain in England, if casually encountering each other in such inhospitable wilds, these twain, for the life of them, cannot well avoid a mutual salutation, and stopping for a moment to interchange the news, and perhaps sitting down for a while and resting in concert. Then how much more natural that upon the illimitable pine barrens and Salisbury plains of the sea, two whaling vessels descrying each other at the ends of the earth, off lone Fanning's Island, or the faraway King's Mills, how much more natural, I say, that under such circumstances these ships should not only I got lost. Should not only interchange hails, but come into still closer, more friendly and sociable contact. And especially would this seem to be a matter of course in the case of vessels owned in one seaport, and whose captains, officers, and not a few of the men are personally known to each other, and consequently have all sorts of dear domestic things to talk about. Let's thank Scar for sleeping there. I didn't even see it logged on. Okay. We're down in a pit. Okay. For the long absent ship, the outward bounder perhaps, has letters on board. At any rate, she will be sure to let her have some papers of a date a year or two later than the last one on her blurred and thumb-worn files. And, in return for that courtesy, the outward-bound ship would receive the latest whaling intelligence from the cruising ground to which she may be destined, a thing of the utmost importance to her. And, in degree, all this will hold true concerning whaling vessels crossing each other's track on the cruising ground itself, even though they are equally long absent from home. For one of them may have received a transfer of letters from a third, and now far remote vessel, and some of those letters may be for people of the ship she now meets. Besides, they would exchange the whaling news, and have an agreeable chat. For not only would they meet with all the sympathies of sailors, but likewise with all the peculiar congenialities arising from a common pursuit, and mutually shared privations and perils. Nor would any difference of country make any very essential difference. That is, so long as both parties speak one language, as is the case with Americans and English. Though, to be sure, from the small number of English whalers, such meetings do not very often occur, and when they do occur, there is too apt to be a sort of shyness between them, for your Englishman is rather reserved, and your Yankee, he does not fancy that sort of thing in anybody but himself. Besides, the English whalers sometimes affect a kind of metropolitan superiority over the American whalers, regarding the long, lean Nantucketer, with his nondescript provincialisms, as a sort of sea peasant. But where this superiority in the English whaleman does really consist, it would be hard to say. Yet, seeing that the Yankees in one day collectively kill more whales than all the English collectively in 10 years. But this is a harmless little foible of the English whale hunters, which the Nantucketer does not take much to heart, probably, because he knows he has a few foibles himself. So, then, we see that of all ships separately sailing the sea, the whalers have the most reason to be sociable. And they are so. Whereas some merchant ships crossing each other's wake in the mid-Atlantic will oftentimes pass on without so much as a single word of recognition, mutually cutting each other on the high seas like a brace of dandies in Broadway, and all the time indulging, perhaps, in a finical criticism upon each other's rigs. As for men of war, when they chance to meet at sea, they first go through such a string of silly bowings and scrapings, such a ducking of ensigns, that there does not seem to be much downright hearty goodwill and brotherly love about it all. As touching slave ships meetings, why, they are in such a prodigious hurry, they run away from each other as soon as possible. And as far as pirates, when they chance to cross each other's crossbones, the first hail is, "How many skulls?" The same way that whalers hail, "How many barrels?" And that question, once answered, pirates straightway steer apart. For they are infernal villains on both sides. I don't like to see over much of each other's villainous likenesses. But look at the godly, honest, unostentatious, hospitable, sociable, free, and easy whaler. What does the whaler do when she meets another whaler in any sort of decent weather? She has a gam. A thing so utterly unknown to all other ships that they never heard of the name, even. And if by chance they should hear about it, they only grin at it and repeat some gamesome stuff about spouters and blubber boilers and such like pretty exclamations. Why is it that all merchant seamen and also all pirates and man-of-war's-men and slave ship sailors cherish such a scornful feeling toward whale ships? This is a question it would be hard to answer. Because in the case of pirates, say, I should like to know whether that profession of theirs has any particular glory about it. It sometimes ends in uncommon elevation. Indeed. But only at the gallows! And besides, when a man is elevated in that odd fashion, he has no proper foundation for his superior altitude. Hence, I conclude that in boasting himself to be high lifted above a whaleman, in that assertion, a pirate has no solid basis to stand on. But what is a gam? You might wear out your index finger running up and down the columns of dictionaries and never find the word. Dr. Johnson never attained to that erudition. Noah Webster's ark does not hold it. Nevertheless, this same expressive word has now for many years been in constant use among 15,000 true-born Yankees. Certainly, it needs a definition and should be incorporated into the lexicon. With that view, let me learnedly define it. Gam. Noun. A social meeting of two or more whale ships, generally on a cruising ground, when, after exchanging hails, they exchange visits by boat's crews. The two captains remaining, for the time, on board of one ship, and the two chief mates on the other. There is another little item about gammon, which must not be forgotten here. All professions have their own little peculiarities of detail. So has the whale fishery. In a pirate, man of war, or slave ship, when the captain is rowed anywhere in his boat, he always sits in the stern, on a comfortable, sometimes cushioned seat there, and often steers himself with a pretty little milliner's tiller, decorated with gay cords and ribbons. But the whaleboat has no such seat astern, no sofa of that sort whatever, and no tiller at all. High times indeed if whaling captains were wheeled about the water on casters like gouty old aldermen in patent chairs. And as for a tiller, the whaleboat never admits of any such effeminacy. And therefore, as in gammon, a complete boat's crew must leave the ship, and hence, as the boat steerer or harpooner is of the number, that subordinate is the steersman upon the occasion. And the captain, having no place to sit in, is pulled off to his visit, all standing like a pine tree. And often, you will notice that being conscious of the eyes of the whole visible world resting on him from the sides of the two ships, this standing captain is all alive to the importance of sustaining his dignity by maintaining his legs. Nor is this any very easy matter, for in his rear, the immense projecting steering oar is hitting him now and then in the small of his back, the after oar reciprocating by wrapping his knees in front. He is thus completely wedged before and behind, and can only expand himself sideways by settling down on his stretched legs. But a sudden violent pitch of the boat will often go far to topple him, because length of foundation is nothing without corresponding breadth. Merely make a spread angle of two poles, and you cannot stand them up. Then again, it would never do, in plain sight of the world's riveted eyes, it would never do, I say, for this straddling captain to be seen steadying himself the slightest particle by catching hold of anything with his hands. Indeed, as token of his entire buoyant self-command, he generally carries his hands in his trousers pockets, but perhaps, being generally very large, heavy hands, he carries them there for ballast? Nevertheless, there have occurred occasions, well authenticated ones too, where the captain has been known for an uncommonly critical moment or two, in a sudden squall, say, to seize hold of the nearest boat oarsman's hair, and hold on there, like grim death. And that concludes chapter 53 of Moby Dick, or the Whale, by Herman Melville. My name is Joe Hills. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Artem Fluid, for the raid. Sorry for not acknowledging you earlier. When we are doing our reading nights, we kind of take a break from acknowledging the chat and tips and raids. So thank you for your patience. Tips are welcome, of course, via paypal.me/showhills and YouTube Super Chat, but they might not be acknowledged until the end of the chapter. Wandering Mask says, I'm coming in late to this book, but Melville was really, really into whalers, huh? Oh, yeah! That's the novel. The novel is, I'm really excited about whaling ships, and if you're not, you're wrong, and I'll explain why. This entire novel is written like a guy at a party that you haven't met, okay? You don't know this guy. The novel opens with the guy introducing himself. He's like, you don't know me, but boy, do I have a lot to say. So, Wandering Mask. I don't know if you're university educated, but, like, let's say that your friends invite you to a party, and you don't really know anybody. So you get your drink, and you're like, kind of like, oh, you know, is there a balcony? Is there a place I can get a nice view? I just, you know, I just need a second to get my bearings, right? You're just like, okay, I don't know this place. I don't know these people. I'm going to get my bearings, and I'm going to have a good time, you know? Yes, my friend already abandoned me at the door, but that's not a crisis. That's an opportunity. I'll be okay. So you step out on the balcony with your drink, and this guy bursts out, and he's like, what up? It's your boy Ishmael, and let me tell you about this time I went to sea on a whaler, because everybody here sucks, and whale ships are awesome, and I met the best people in my whole life, except for the captain who was insane. Have you ever had a bad boss? That is this book. This guy is, like, trying to tell a story. This is not technically a science fiction novel. This is not technically a science fiction novel. But this book anticipates the existence of a guy telling a story at a party who keeps looking up stuff on Wikipedia as he goes better than Asimov did. Melville deserves credit for that. This is a book about Wikipedia written over 150 years before Wikipedia existed. This is a guy with a cell phone and Wikipedia telling you a story that you are not necessarily uninterested in, but you didn't necessarily show up for this. Okay? Like, this is a whole thing. This entire book is a whole thing. And that you're going to say, well, of course, any book isn't a whole thing. It's like, no. No. Chapter 32 on cetology is basically Melville anticipating the creation of the online forum tier list post. Basically, Melville is like, okay, a bunch of biologists tried to, like, explain the differences between whales, and I'm going to rank the whales right now, and my explanation for everything is better than all of them. It's also, like, a call-out post for a bunch of marine biologists at the time. Melville was not a marine biologist. He was a guy who, like, wrote random adventure stories. He was already famous when this book came out. He was, like, kind of like Tom Clancy or Michael Crichton might be the closest thing. Or Clive Cussler. So, people already knew who Herman Melville was when this book came out. But Herman Melville was not a marine biologist. So a bunch of marine biologists, all of a sudden, this book comes out, and they're like, why am I in this guy's book, and why is he so mad at me? He has an entire chapter explaining why I'm bad at my job. I have a degree. I'm a professor. What the hell? Like, this was a weird book. This book anticipated the internet in a way that almost no other book did. And that's why we still read it today. Okay? That's why we still read Melville today. Hey, Frozen Jokes, welcome. Yeah, we're talking about... There's a reason I selected this book for book club. I don't think most people understand why it's relevant, and I want to do my best to explain it. I haven't written an essay about this book, Pluto. I just read the book out loud. Ken BN says, I need to catch up. This is, I'm only doing VODs once a week now. and only for these streams so people can catch up. You can read this book on your own, but I do have VODs of it. Speaking of Twitter, I know I've been complaining that I feel like Twitter is dead. But there is one guy. I don't know this guy, but I need to meet him. I need to meet this guy. This guy is great. I don't know if anybody knows Jolin Merricks. I don't know if anybody here knows Jolin Merricks. I don't know if this guy's old enough to even buy a drink. He might be 18. I'm gonna die in Minecraft. I have alt tabbed out. And I'm gonna die in Minecraft. Was there any water? Okay. Let's turn mob sounds back on real quick. So, Jolin Merricks on August 27th said, "To all the doubters, bookmark this tweet. If Vanderbilt loses this weekend, I will delete my account. That's how confident I am in my Vanderbilt Commodores. I am 100% serious." And Vanderbilt defeated Virginia today. And he's just got this great video of him in the stadium. Like, yeah, that's right. My favorite, a lot of people responded to this. Over 500,000 people liked his, or saw his, what is it? No, yeah. 585,000 people saw his original message, right? That's 500,000. And so he's got this great video of him in the stadium just being like super like, yeah, that's right. Of all of the feedback I saw on the Nashville Twitter after this. Because if you guys don't know, I live in Nashville and I'm a Vanderbilt alum. And so when I went to Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt was not good at football. We had our first game beating UT, the University of Tennessee, in like 27 years while I was a student there, and everybody lost their minds. It was bonkers. We keep hoping that we're going to make a resurgence, but we are considered just historically the worst team in the SEC, right? And so my favorite response to Jolin's tweets today was one guy goes, you can't have a perfect season if you don't win the first game. And just the idea of Vanderbilt winning every game this season is so preposterous. But also, it's just like, you know what? Why not? We're on track. Let's go. I'm feeling hype. So that might be part of why I'm feeling kind of hyped today. Let's welcome back Scar. Welcome back, Scar. Hey, Guile. Sorry that Twitter is blocked in Brazil. Yeah. I'm not really involved in either part of that. I'm not a part of the Brazilian judicial branch, and I don't work for Twitter. So this is what I'm kind of sit out. I don't really know how I could apply influence in any way on that. Double five ill I am says, "Oh, this is a good thing." Yeah, it's a good thing when Vanderbilt wins. I like Vanderbilt. I went there, and I still live in town. Hi, Scar. Okay. I'm looking at the title of the next chapter. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good. That'll keep YouTube from accidentally misclassifying us as a kid's stream. What we're reading. Moby Dick, chapter 54. The Town Hose Story. Okay, so we're going to pin that. Don't worry, it doesn't mean what it might mean in a modern context, but the YouTube algorithm will still monetize as well then. Not gonna be a children's channel. Gonna build a winery and talk about whiskey and Scotland and distilling and brewery and distillery tours. Algorithm, I don't like you much. That's the entire song. Real quick, let me reopen my alerts tab in my email. Cool, no alerts. Just as a reminder, before we start reading Chapter 54, the town host story, as told at the Golden Inn, from Herman Melville's The Whale, or Moby Dick. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills, and also YouTube Super Chat. We are currently only $4 away from the next Face Camera Expansion milestone. There's going to be no stream next Saturday. I'm getting married late next week, and my honeymoon is the second week in September. So, y'all will have to find something else to watch next Saturday. Just as a reminder, when you are self-employed, you don't really get paid vacation days. You just kind of eat through your savings. And hope that it works out okay at the end of the month when rent is due. So, yeah, the more that y'all would like to contribute and help me build up those savings, that would be fantastic. Because doing the math based on my current savings, I'm like, okay, if September is a good month for tips, in the last 2 weeks, we'll be fine. But, like, I'm not in the clear by any means. So, anybody who would like to reduce my stress levels while I'm trying to take time off, just, that's the best way to do it. Because every little bit helps. I don't normally take a lot of days off at once for this reason. But when it comes to, like, getting married, I feel like I need to make an exception, whether it's the smart move or not. I can always max out my credit cards and empty my retirement fund. It's fine, but I'd prefer not to. I'd prefer to just eat through my savings. So, if you would like to support my work and me taking some time off, now's a great time to do it. Even if you never tipped before, even just $1 helps. 5? Hey, that's 5 times as good. I won't complain. The Abacus does keep track cumulatively toward the next $20 expansion. Thank you, Chloe the Great and Powerful, for tipping 28, who says, honeymoon fun! Boom! That is 4 gets you 1 face camera expansion. Let's do that first. Here we go. Expand Joe. Do. Then for the second face camera expansion milestone, y'all have seen that money go straight to my head with each face camera expansion milestone we hit. But now, like Jacob Marley, these chains I forged in life are about to remind me that humanity was my business and begin pulling me down to the deep below. Enter the ghost. Ba 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 ba. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 90%. At this point, each additional face camera expansion milestone will be accompanied by a corresponding drop in Joe opacity. Thanks to Chloe the Great and Powerful, we are now only $16 away from the next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Okay. I think we're about ready to read Chapter 54, The Town Hose Story. Once again, here's a link to that. Welcome, Sheepish. As told at the Golden Inn. The Cape of Good Hope and all the watery regions round about there is much like some noted four corners of a great highway, where you meet more travelers than in any other part. It was not very long after speaking to the Goni that another homeward-bound whaleman, the Town Ho, was encountered. Town ho was the ancient whale cry upon first sighting a whale from the masthead, still used by whalemen in hunting in the famous Galapagos terrapin. She was manned almost wholly by Polynesians. In the short gam that ensued, she gave us strong news of Moby Dick. To some, the general interest in the white whale was now wildly heightened by a circumstance of the town ho's story, which seemed obscurely to involve with the whale a certain wondrous inverted visitation of one of those so-called judgments of God, which are at times said to overtake some men. This latter circumstance, with its own particular accompaniments, forming what may be called the secret part of the tragedy about to be narrated, never reached the ears of Captain Ahab or his mates. For that secret part of the story was unknown to the captain of the town ho himself. It was the private property of 3 Confederate white seamen of that ship, one of whom, it seems, communicated it to Tashtego with Romish injunctions of secrecy. But the following night, Tashtego rambled in his sleep and revealed so much of it in that way that when he was wakened, he could not well withhold the rest. Nevertheless, so potent an influence did this thing have on those seamen in the Pequod who came to have full knowledge of it, and by such a strange delicacy, to call it so, were they governed in this manner, that they kept the secret among themselves, so that it never transpired abaft the Pequod's main mast, interweaving in its proper place this darker thread with the story as publicly narrated on the ship. The whole of the strange affair I now proceed to put on lasting record. For my humor's sake, I shall preserve the style in which I once narrated at Lima to a lounging circle of my Spanish friends, one Saint's Eve, smoking upon the thick gilt piazza of the Golden Inn. Of those fine cavaliers, the young dons Pedro and Sebastian were on the closer terms with me, and hence the interluding questions they occasionally put, which are duly answered at the time. Before we get into this conversation at the Golden Inn, I'm going to take a second to get those chains off, use the bed, and to thank Elsa for tipping 5. Thank you, Elsa. We don't always acknowledge tips in the middle of the chapter unless there's a breaking point, but this is about to be a pretty big breaking point. For those of you just joining us, when I read Ishmael's narration, the narration I'm doing kind of in my natural speech. Also, my inventory is full, and I have a really hard time reading while I do inventory management. That's I feel like I can mine while reading fine, but the second I start going through all these chests over here, I start stuttering and staggering and messing up. So we're gonna just empty the inventory. We're gonna thank Elsa for the tip. We're gonna repost the tip and link. Landon Rawlings, you did walk in on something. We're in the middle of chapter 54 of Moby Dick, which is pinned at the top. Okay, the last person who started just writing a single letter like that, Frozen Jokes, wrote a whole bunch of letters that spelled something very rude. So I'm going to go ahead and time you out for now. but I'll ban you if you come back and do it again. Don't just post a single letter like that. And that letter in particular is never a great start when somebody's about to post something 10 seconds apart at a time, one letter at a time. Okay. So, anyway, when I'm reading Ishmael as the narrator, in general, in Moby Dick, I'm talking like I'm talking now, basically. A little bit more emphatic, because Ishmael is an emphatic guy. He's very hype about his story about going to sea and being on a whaling ship. But when Ishmael speaks aloud, being as he's from New England, I give him a bit of a New England accent. A bit of a Cape Cod accent. Might not be fully accurate for Ishmael's background or the time period. Welcome, Chimera Dev. Yeah, we're in the middle of reading Moby Dick, so this is about to get weird. I was just about to explain to everybody. So yeah, even though I'm switching voices as the narrator, I'm still speaking as Ishmael here. But I'm speaking as Ishmael aloud rather than Ishmael in writing. And I give Ishmael a more distinct New England accent when I do that. So, let's see. So, yeah. So, even though, like, the previous line was, of those fine cavaliers, the young Dons, Pedro and Sebastian, were on the closer terms with me, and hence the interlude questions they occasionally put, and which are answered at the time. See, I'm just using my normal accent for that. Hey, real quick, before we continue. Mariana, tipping 50. 11 gets you one face camera expansion milestone. 31 gets you another one. And then, hold on. 41. 50 gets us $1 away from the third. Let's get those two face camera expansions on the board before we continue our chapter. Expand Joe. Do. I might have done that really way too big. Lowering the Joe opacity to 80%. Numero dos, even larger Joe. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 70%. The camera's kind of in a weird place because of where I put the reading. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So, thank you very much, Mariana. I'm not going to be posting any pictures of the wedding until after I'm back from the honeymoon. And also, I might not remember to take pictures at the wedding. So, maybe Quinn will take some, and I'll have Quinn post them on Tumblr, and I'll link them. Centauritron says, long chapter. My copy is 20 pages for this chapter. Wait, what? Oh my god, I'm scrolling through this. This is the longest freaking chapter. Okay. Centauritron, I appreciate you freaking me out, but we're gonna pretend like I didn't know that, because I don't read ahead on this. I read this book, Glass and Pain, Don't Threaten to Lynch People. That's really rude, especially in the South. Okay. This is a very long chapter, and I didn't know that, because I don't read this ahead. I'm reading this live. One day, it would be nice if I could read audiobooks for people. But I know I don't have time to do serious practice for that, so I kind of have goofy practice for that every Saturday night, where we hang out and we read a chapter of a book. So we're going to do that. This is not going to be a good reading, but it will be a heartfelt, intentional, emotional experience. And I'm going to... We'll see how far we get. We're only an hour into the stream. Wandering Mass says, maybe we don't read the whole chapter tonight. Maybe there will be breakpoints. I really don't like ending a stream in the middle of a chapter. But yeah, I mean, if this chapter is that long, we might have to. Let's see how far we can go. Okay, Moby Dick. Chapter 54. The Town Ho. Part 2. Take 1. No, there's only one take. I'm just kidding. Let's go. Some 2 years prior to my first learning the events which I am about rehearsing to you, gentlemen, the Town Ho, sperm whaler of Nantucket, was cruising in your Pacific here. Not very many days' sail eastward from the eaves of this good Golden Inn. She was somewhere to the northward of the line. One morning, upon handling the pumps according to daily usage, it was observed that she made more water in her hold than was common. They supposed a swordfish had stabbed her gentleman, but the captain, having some unusual reason for believing that rare good luck awaited him in those latitudes, and therefore being very averse to quit them, and the leak not being then considered at all dangerous, though indeed they could not find it after all searching the hold as low down as was possible in rather heavy weather, the ship still continued her cruisings, the mariners working at the pumps at wide and easy intervals, but no good luck came. More days went by, and not only was the leak yet undiscovered, but it sensibly increased, so much so that now taking some alarm, the captain, making all sail, stood away for the nearest harbor among the islands, there to have his hull hove out and repaired. Though no small passage was before her yet, if the calmest chance favored, he did not at all fear that his ship would founder by the way, because his pumps were of the best, and, being periodically relieved at them, those 36 men of his could easily keep the ship free, never mind if the leak should double on her. In truth, well nigh the whole of this passage, being attended by very prosperous breezes, the town-ho had all but certainly arrived in perfect safety at her port without the occurrence of the least fatality. Had it not been for the brutal overbearing of Radney, the mate, a vineyarder, and bitterly provoked vengeance of Steelkilt, a lakeman, and desperado from Buffalo.
Lakeman, Buffalo, pray, what is a lakeman? Where is Buffalo?
Said Don Sebastian, rising in his swinging mat of grass. On the eastern shore of our Lake Erie, Don. But I crave your courtesy. Maybe you shall soon hear further of all that. Now, gentlemen, in square sail brigs and three-masted ships well nigh as large and stout as any that ever sailed out from your old Cayo to Farmania, this lakeman, in the landlocked heart of our America, had yet been nurtured by all those agrarian freebooting impressions popularly connected with the open ocean. For in their interflowing aggregate, those grand freshwater seas of ours, Erie, and Ontario, and Huron, and Superior, and Michigan, possess an ocean-like expansiveness, with many of the ocean's noblest traits, with many of its rimmed varieties of races and of climes. They contain round archipelagos of romantic islands, even as the Polynesian waters do, in large part shored by two great contrasting nations, as the Atlantic is. They furnish long maritime approaches to our numerous territorial colonies from the east, dotted all round their banks. Here and there are frowned upon by batteries, and by the goat-like craggy guns of lofty Mackinaw. They have heard the fleet thunderings of naval victories at intervals. They yield their beaches to wild barbarians, whose painted faces flash from out their paltry wigwams. For leagues and leagues are flanked by ancient and unentered forests, where gaunt pines stand like serried lines of kings and Gothic genealogies. These same woods harboring wild Afric beasts of prey and silken creatures whose exported furs gave robes to Tartar emperors. They mirror the paved capitals of Buffalo and Cleveland, as well as the Winnebago villages. They float alike the full-rigged merchant ship, the armored cruiser of the state, the steamer, and the beach canoe. They are swept by Borean and dismasting blasts as direful as any that lash the salted wave. They know what shipwrecks are, for out of sight of land, however inland, they have drowned many a midnight ship with all its shrieking crew. Thus, gentlemen, though an inlander, Steelkilt was wild ocean born and wild ocean nurtured, as much of an audacious mariner as any. And for Radney, though in his infancy he may have laid him down on lone Nantucket beach to nurse at his maternal sea, though in after life he had long followed our austere Atlantic and your contemplative Pacific, yet he was quite as vengeful and full of social quarrel as the backwoods seaman, fresh from the latitudes of buck-horn-handled bowie knives. Yet was this Nantucketer a man with some good-hearted traits, and this lakeman a mariner who, though a sort of devil indeed, might yet by inflexible firmness, only tempered by that common decency of human recognition, which is the meanest slave's right, thus treated this Steelkilt had long been retained harmless and docile. At all events, he had proved so thus far. But Radney was doomed and made mad, and Steelkilt. But, gentlemen, you shall hear. It was not more than a day or two at the furthest after pointing her prow for her island haven that the town-hose leak seemed again increasing, but only so as to require an hour more at the pumps or so each day. You must know that in settled and civilized oceans like our Atlantic, for example, some skippers think little of pumping their whole way across it. Though of a still, sleepy night, should the officer of the deck happen to forget his duty in that respect, the probability would be that he and his shipmates would never again remember it, on account of all hands gently subsiding to the bottom. Nor in the solitary and savage seas far from you to the westward, gentlemen, is it altogether unusual for ships to keep clanging at their pump handles in full chorus, even for a voyage of considerable length. That is, if it lie along a tolerably accessible coast, or if in any reasonable retreat is afforded to them. It is only when a leaky vessel is in some very out-of-the-way part of those waters, some really landless latitude, that her captain begins to feel a little anxious. Much this way it had been with the town-ho. So when her leak was found gaining once more, there was, in truth, some small concern manifested by several of her company, especially by Radney, the mate. He commanded the upper sails to be well hoisted, sheeted home anew, and every way expanded to the breeze. Now, this Radney, I suppose, was as little of a coward and as little inclined to any sort of nervous apprehensiveness touching his own person as any fearless, unthinking creature on land or on sea that you can conveniently imagine, gentlemen. Therefore, when he betrayed this solicitude about the safety of the ship, some of the seamen declared that it was only on account of his being part owner in her. So, when they were working that evening at the pumps, there was on this head no small gamesomeness slyly going on among them, as they stood with their feet continuously overflowed by the rippling clear water. Clear as any mountain spring, gentlemen, that bubbling from the pumps ran across the deck and poured itself out in steady spouts at the lee scupper holes. Now, as you know, it is not seldom the case in this conventional world of ours, watery or otherwise, that when a person placed in command, or his fellow man, finds one of them to be very significantly his superior in general pride of manhood, straightway against that man he conceives an unconquerable dislike and bitterness. And if he have a chance, he will pull down and pulverize that subaltern's tower, and make a little heap of dust of it. Be this conceit mine as it may, gentlemen, at all events, Steelkilt was a tall and noble animal, with a head like a Roman, and a flowing golden beard like the tasseled housings of your last viceroy snorting Georgia, and a brain and a heart and a soul in him, gentlemen, which had made Steelkilt Charlemagne, had he been born to Charlemagne's father. But Radney, the mate, was ugly as a mule, yet as haughty, and as stubborn, and as malicious. He did not love Steelkilt, and Steelkilt knew it. Espying the mate drawing near as he was toiling at the pump with the rest, the lakeman affected not to notice him, but, unawed, went on with his gay banterings.
Aye, my merry lads, it's a lively league this. Hold a Kettigan, one of you. Let's have a taste. By the Lord, it's worth bottling. I tell you what, men, old Rad's investment must go for it. He had best cut away his part of the hull and tow it home. The fact is, boys, that swordfish only began the job. He's come back again with a gang of ship's carpenters, sawfish and filefish and whatnot. And the whole posse of them are now hard at work, cutting and slashing at the bottom, making improvements, I suppose. If old Rad were here now, I'd tell him to jump overboard and scatter them. They're playing the devil with his estate, I can tell him. But he's a simple old soul, Rad. Oh, and a beauty, too. Boys, they say that the rest of his property is invested in looking glasses. I wonder if he'd give a poor devil like me a model of his nose.
Damn your eyes! What's that pump stopping for? Roared Rodney, pretending not to have heard the sailors talk. Thunder away at it!
Aye, aye, sir,
said Steelkit, merry as a cricket.
Oh, lively, boys, lively now.
And with that, the pump clanged like 50 fire engines. The men tossed their hats off to it. Ere long, that peculiar gasping of the lungs were heard, which denotes the fullest tension of life's utmost energies. Quitting the pump at last with the rest of his band, the lakeman went forward, all panting, and sat himself down at the windlass, his face fiery red, his eyes bloodshot, and wiping the profuse sweat from his brow. Now, what cozening fiend it was, gentlemen, that possessed Radney to meddle with such a man in that corporeally exasperated state, I know not. But so it happened. Intolerably striding along the deck, the mate commanded him to get a broom and sweep down all the planks. And also a shovel, and remove some offensive matters consequent upon allowing a pig to run at large. Now, gentlemen, sweeping a ship's deck at sea is a piece of household work which in all times but raging gales is regularly attended to every evening. It has been known to be done in the case of ships actually foundering at the time. Such, gentlemen, is the inflexibility of sea usages and the insensitivity and the instinctive love of neatness in seamen, some of whom would not willingly drown without first washing their faces. But in all vessels, this broom business is the prescriptive providence of the boys, if boys there be aboard. Besides, it was the stronger men in the town-ho that had been divided into gangs, taking turns at the pumps, and being the most athletic seaman of them all, Steelkilt had been regularly assigned captain of one of the gangs. Consequently, he should have been freed from any trivial business not connected with truly nautical duties, such being the case with his comrades. I mention all these particulars so that you may understand exactly how this affair stood between the two men. But there was more than this. The order about the shovel was almost as plainly meant to sting and insult Steelkilt as though Radney had spat in his face. Any man who has gone sailor on a whale ship will understand this. And all this, and doubtless much more, the lakeman fully comprehended when the mate uttered this command. But as he sat still for a moment, and as he steadfastly looked into the mate's malignant eye, and perceived the stacks of powder casks heaped up in him, and the slow match silently burning along toward them, as he instinctively saw all this, that strange forbearance and unwillingness to stir up the deeper passionateness in an already ireful being, a repugnance most felt, when felt at all, by really valiant men, even when aggrieved, this nameless phantom feeling, gentlemen, stole o'er Steelkilt. Therefore, in his ordinary tone, only a little broken by the bodily exhaustion he was temporarily in, he answered him, saying that sweeping the deck was not his business, and he would not do it. And then, without at all alluding to the shovel, he pointed to 3 lads as the customary sweepers, who, not being billeted at the pumps, had done little or nothing at all that day. To this, Radney replied with an oath, in a most domineering and outrageous manner, unconditionally reiterating his command. Meanwhile, advancing upon the still-seated lakeman with an uplifted cooper's club hammer, which he had snatched from a cask nearby. Welcome, Sabersen Raiders. We're in the middle of a very long chapter of Moby Dick. Chapter 54, which is a secret account of a murder. And we're about to figure out whose murder. So, thank you. I don't normally interrupt in the middle of a chapter, but this is like one of the longest chapters in the whole book. And I do need to take a quick second to drink and blow my nose. We do these readings every Saturday night. This is my little practice. One day I think it would be fun to read books on tape for a living, but they might not still have tapes later, so this is just kind of something I do. I figure if I get 2 hours of practice every Saturday, one day when I decide I really want to put my heart into this. I mean, it's not that my heart's not into it. It's that, straight up, I cannot afford to train myself. I know that a job like that requires a degree of practice. I don't have the hours for every week right now. I'm a single parent. I'm getting married soon. Too much on my plate. Do a little bit of fun practice. And hopefully, one day, it prepares me to do the real thing. Sabrasen says, love live readings. Milton Knowles says, I thought you were just making this up. Is this Moby Dick? Yeah, this is Moby Dick. Read the pinned link. Oh my god, you thought I was just telling a ghost story or something? I'm not this good. I'm not Herman Melville. Milton, you have made my night. I'm not trying to embarrass you. Thank you. That's a very kind thing to say. I know you didn't mean to say it in that way. Thank you. Thank you, YouTube chat. Thank you, Milton. Yeah, we got 3 chats going. We got a tip for 5 rolling in from Leslie, who says, just got here for murder. That gets us $4 past our next face camera expansion milestone. So Sabersen says, I love the face cam. Very interesting. Well, don't worry. It gets bigger every time we hit a $20 tipping milestone, which we just did. Here we go. Expand Joe. Do. Lowering the Joe passing out to 60%. This is the most obnoxious face camera expansion milestone. When we hit 60 degrees, or is it 60 degrees, 60% Joe passing? I don't know. Whatever. We're at the point where we can't fill any more of the screen. So everybody who's tipped up to this point has been making the camera more obnoxious. However, it will keep getting bigger, but also more transparent. So, yeah, if anybody wants to help get us through this, we are $16 away. I can't even tell if that's in frame because of where I have the reading window, but it's fine. Chimera Dev says, I've never seen or read Moby Dick before. It's difficult to go through because I'm not English, but it's fun to hear you voice it. Thank you. Pluto Pulsar says, this book, my mom says this book is so dry, but the way you read it is amazing and it keeps my attention. This book was written for the internet age. Our parents were too young for Moby Dick. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, they were ahead of their... Like, this book is more valuable now than it was 150 years ago. Monate says, I'm in the background cheering for my hometown boy. Steel kit, steel kit, steel kilt. Yay. Okay. So we're gonna give a few minutes for any more tips to roll in. I need to take a second and have a few more sips of my drink and maybe empty my inventory. Emptying my inventory is the hardest thing to do in the middle of a reading. I am reading this live. This is not pre-recorded. I am actively mining in Minecraft while practicing reading a book on tape. Part of that is I figure that when I decide I want to read books on tape for real, I'm not going to be playing Minecraft while I do it, but I'll already be, like, practiced at some of the parts, and I'll be like, oh my god, this is, like, on easy mode now, right? Could you imagine just reading out loud without playing Minecraft at the same time? What even is that? Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Okay. Let's rush over here. So, yeah, thank you for everybody joining us tonight on Saturday. Wandering Mouse writes, impossible. Herman Melville says, according to Alpacatastic, I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are going to love it. Yeah. Centauratron says, looking at the index, this is the longest chapter for quite a while, quite possibly the longest in the book. It might be. I did not... So I've read this book before, but I read this book like half a decade ago when Evan Dom did his Kickstarter. Because I have the Evan Dom beautifully illustrated physical copy. I'm not reading from that during the stream because I would be hitting the microphone with the physical book. I'm reading from Project Gutenberg, but... Cybersen says, I still want to read all of Kafka while playing Minecraft one day. Yeah, I used to listen to Kafka on tape while I was working and while I was driving. and one of my coworkers was like, "How could you listen to that while you're driving?" I would turn that on and just immediately veer off the road. I just can't. But yeah, Kafka would be fun to read. I feel like the thing is fun to read and fun to listen to. It's not always a Venn diagram, right? And so I picked this book because I think this is a book that really benefits from being read to you. Okay, I feel like some books are better like you read it to yourself. But I genuinely feel like having somebody really capture Ishmael's excited Wikipedia party guest energy adds a lot. Like, I see what Melville was going for, and I can deliver it, right? This is so whenever I pick a book, I always want to pick a book where I'm like, okay, this is something where viewers will get something out of listening to me read it, more than above average, right? Okay. Count of Monte Cristo went. I don't know. I'm not promising anything. I'm not picking a next book yet. Okay. Okay. We have almost filled up enough shulkers to go visit Etho again. Visit Etho. Did me visiting Etho make it into his video? I've been so busy all day preparing for wedding stuff. I haven't seen Etho's latest video. And I will not be offended if you go watch it instead of watching me read Moby Dick. Wandering Mass says it did. Oh, awesome. Yay. That makes me really happy. Because, like, I know Etho will record his episodes over the course of, like, 20 days. And so, for, like, a particular bit of footage to be worth keeping is, you know, a real... I'm not going to say it's an honor, but Etho, you had many choices when determining whose footage to include in your video. Thank you for choosing Joe Hills. The Count of Monte Cristo is guaranteed to be non-stick. Yeah. Oh my gosh. He mentioned the stone for frog light steel. Oh, awesome. Did he visit the Popo lockup and see how many chests of frog lights I had? I gotta check this out when I get the chance. We've got less than a week until the wedding, and I have... This is not intended as a disrespect to Etho, but, like, I just haven't had the chance to make watching his video a priority. This has been a busy week. My goal is that by the time he gets over there again... He did show himself clearing out the Frogger viewing tunnel. The stone you stashed there. Yeah, I felt bad for that, like, as soon as I did it. Not bad enough to fix it, but bad enough to stop doing it, because I had 8 times as much stone as that. Monate says, I love when Joe shows up in other Hermit's videos, because there's even less context than usual. He also did a payment system to make sure no swords are accidentally deposited. Oh, that's good. Hi, I'm down here now. Just keep mining stone. I guess that's just what we do, huh? Okay. So, did I repost the link after Leslie's tip? No. Of course not. I was going to say, we are only 16 away from the next Face Gamer expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Monate says, I enjoy being confused by your motives. Thank you. Yeah. I always do what makes sense to me at the time, but it's not a priority for me to explain it to other people. Like, Sabersen says, congrats on the wedding. Glad to be able to jump in here a bit, but I have to hit the bed. Good night, dude. Thank you so much for the raid, Sabersen. Good luck to you with your streams. Thanks for being a long-term viewer. Sleep well. Lay your head down and dream. Okay. Paul says, he says you leave stone in strange places. Nice. Oh gosh, I was like, if I fall down that same hole again, I'm gonna be so bad. Okay, good. Different hole. Okay. So I think we're ready to resume. This is a really long chapter. We normally don't break up the middle of the chapters like this. But this is apparently one of the longest chapters in the book. last time I read this book was like 5 years ago, so I have not been preparing or pre-reading for these streams. This is me doing a lot of things wrong just to see where the gaps are. If I was going to properly read books on tape, I would need to pre-read and annotate and make notes with voices and highlight things. I'm not doing any of that here. We're doing it live. We're doing it live to learn how bad it can be to not properly annotate the books in advance. So then when I properly annotate the books in advance, I'll be like, oh, wow, this is a treat. This is easy mode. I'm so happy. I'm, like, loving this. Whoa, we got a tip rolling in from Ella D, who says, congratulations on the upcoming wedding. Loving the murder chapter. Ella D, thank you. The first 16 of that 30 gets you one face camera expansion milestone, and then we're another 14 past. So here we go. It's time to expand Jost. Do-do-do-do. Thank you so much, Ella D. I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying this reading of Moby Dick. You know what I probably should start doing? I probably should start pre-reading and annotating the next book before I finish Moby Dick, and then try and do the next one like it was a real book on tape reading. Maybe that's the sort of slow and steady practice burn that we need. But yeah, thank you so much, Elodie. We really appreciate it. It's gonna be... It's not normal for me to take this many days off at once. I'm feeling a lot better, though, thanks to y'all's support for the last week and a half or so. People have really been showing up, and I do appreciate it. Part of me is like, I haven't really been in a place the last few years to build up a lot of savings, and I've been burning through them quite a bit, too. Just trying to get by, trying to bridge things during the pandemic and whatnot, and, like, I would really, I really am very appreciative of how, like, y'all have been helping out last, whatever. McLeslie says it'd be cool if Joe gets 5,000 likes on a video, so deserving. I don't know what's normal. McLeslie, likes impact my actual day-to-day life so much, I don't know if that's a lot. That actually sounds like, I feel like that's way too few. Like, if you ask me how many likes I get on a video, I'd say, I don't know, 10,000? Because I don't look at it. And the fact that you're saying it'd be cool if I got 5,000 means I probably am not getting 10,000. I just don't know. The thing is, you can't make art around statistics without going insane in, like, the wrong way. So I just don't look at them. I'm actually deeply concerned that I'm completely untethered now from actual YouTube analytics. Because you wouldn't say that if it wasn't a nice thing to say. But, like, I literally have no idea what I normally get on a video. And if on one particular video I got 10 times as many likes, I would not know it. So that's, like, cool that you want that for me, but it wouldn't be for me. I would literally not find out that a video had more likes than usual. Ever. Like, I don't have somebody on my staff who tells me that. Like, analytics are really bad for your mental health, so I just don't look at them. I just try to make the best art I can and not go broke. And the only hard numbers I look at in relation to the stream are the financials, because I have to know if we can make rent that month. And if we can't make rent that month, I need to call up some website clients and, like, be like, hey, you guys having any problems with your website lately you need help with? Because I'd love to bill you. That's it. I just can't look at likes and views. It's not a good thing. Somebody was like, Joe, Skiz is gonna have more subs than you soon. And I'm like, Skiz doesn't already have more subs than me? I figured he had like 500,000. I don't look at this stuff. What do you mean Skiz has less subs than me? That's stupid. Skiz should have 1 million subs. I figured he only had 500,000 because he was busy working for Intel. And you're telling me he has less than me? That's dumb. Okay, so anyway, we're in the middle of reading chapter 54 of Moby Dick. Another book about obsession. Oh, where are these guys coming from? Probably the ground, I guess. Should we do something? Gestures broadly about the ground. Okay, so yeah, let's get back to this murder story we're reading. This is now like a true crime narrative that Ishmael is describing to a bunch of Spanish people. Okay. So, Radney is walking. Radney just insulted Steelkilt. And Steelkilt is trying to brush it off and be like, oh, come on, man, that's not my job. And Radney is now walking toward him with a Cooper's hammer. I don't know if you all know much about barrel making, but a Cooper's hammer is not something that the ship's mate would normally be carrying or walking towards somebody who just disobeyed him with, right? So we're about to have some tropes, okay? We're about to have some serious tropes. We're going to lay our head down and dream before we start rereading this. Elodie apparently just Googled what a Cooper's hammer looks like and says, dang, that's a scary looking hammer. Yeah, it's not great. You don't want somebody walking towards you, like, who just gave you a stupid command. And you're like, oh, come on, bro. That's not cool. And they're like, I got this hammer. Okay. So here we go. Chapter 54 of Moby Dick, or the Whale, by Herman Melville, Part 3. Heated and irritated as he was by his spasmodic toil at the pumps, for all his first nakedness, feeling of forbearance, the sweating Steelkilt could but ill brook this bearing in the mate, but somehow still smothering the conflagration within him. Without speaking, he remained doggedly rooted to his seat, till at last the incensed Radney shook the hammer within a few inches of his face, furiously commanding him to do his bidding. Steelkilt rose, and, slowly retreating round the windlass, steadily followed by the mate with his menacing hammer, deliberately repeated his intention to not obey. Seeing, however, that his forbearance had not the slightest effect, by an awful and unspeakable intimation with his twisted hand, he warned off the foolish and infatuated man. But it was to no purpose. And in this way the two went once slowly round the windlass, then, resolved as much as comported with his humor, the lakeman paused on the hatches, and thus spoke to the officer.
Mr. Radney, I will not obey you. Take that hammer away, or look to yourself.
But the predestinated mate, coming still closer to him, where the lakeman stood fixed, now shook the heavy hammer within an inch of his teeth, meanwhile repeating a string of insufferable maledictions, retreating not the thousandth part of an inch, stabbing him in the eye with the unflinching poniard of his glance, Steelkilt, clenching his right hand behind him, and creepingly drawing it back, told his persecutor that if the hammer but grazed his cheek, he, Steelkilt, would murder him. But, gentlemen, the fool had been branded for the slaughter by the gods. Immediately the hammer touched the cheek. The next instant, the lower jaw of the mate was stove in his head. He fell on the hatch, spouting blood like a whale. And the cry could go aft. Steelkilt was shaking one of the backstays, leaning far aloft to where two of his comrades were standing their mastheads. They were both Canallas.
Canellas!
Cried Don Pedro.
We have seen many whale ships in our harbors, but never heard of your Canellas. Pardon, who are they?
Canallas, Don, are the boatmen belonging to our Grand Erie Canal. You must have heard of it.
Nay, senor, hereabouts in this dull, warm, most lazy and hereditary land, we know but little of your vigorous north.
Aye. Well then, Don. Refill my cup. Your chicha's very fine, and ere proceeding further, I will tell you what our canals are. For such information may throw sidelight upon my story. For 360 miles, gentlemen, through the entire breadth of the state of New York, through numerous populous cities and most thriving villages, though long, dismal, uninhabited swamps and affluent cultivated fields unrivaled for fertility, by billiard room and bar room, through the holy of holies of great forests, on Roman arches, over Indian rivers, through sun and shade, by happy hearts or broken, through all the wide contrasting scenery of those noble Mohawk countries, and especially by rows of snow-white chapels whose spires stand almost like milestones, flows one continuous stream of Venetianly corrupt and often lawless life. There's your true Ashante, gentlemen. There howl your pagans, wherever you find 'em, next door to you, under the long-flung shadow, and the snug, patronizing lee of churches, for by some curious fatality, as it is often noted of your metropolitan freebooters, that they ever encamp around the halls of justice. So sinners, gentlemen, so most abound in holiest vicinities.
Is that a friar passing?
Said Don Pedro, looking downward into the crowded plaza with humorous concern. A moment, pardon, cried another of the company. In the name of all us limeys, I desire but to express to you, Sir Sailor, that we have by no means overlooked your delicacy in not substituting present Lima for distant Venice in your corrupt comparison. Oh, do not bow and look surprised. You know the proverb all along this coast, corrupt as Lima. It but bears out your saying, too. Churches more plentiful than billiard tables, and forever open and corrupt as Lima. So to Venice I have been there, the holy city of the blessed evangelist St. Mark, St. Dominic. Purge it! Your cup, thanks. Here I refill now. You pour out again. Okay, I want to point out that, like, this whole book is a guy drunkenly telling a story, and we've gotten into the bizarrely meta story within a story where he's trying to explain how a murder happened, and he's about to talk about the Erie Canal to some people who don't know what the Erie Canal is, while asking them to give him more drinks. While another guy who's bored is just like, is that a friar? Is anybody else seeing that? Like, I don't think that the friar thing is a comment on, like, what he was saying. Like, oh, that friar might hear your story. I think it's just like, oh, hey, is that guy a friar? Wait, what are we... Okay. Like, we are 3 layers deep, according to Wandering Mask, yeah. This is a whole thing. This entire book is a whole thing. Okay. Quick reminder, while we're taking a break, tips are welcome via paypal.me/showhills, YouTube Super Chat. Monte says, a desperate soul trying to change the subject. We're actually getting to see how people that Ishmael is talking to at a party respond to him. Okay. So, anyway, here we go. Freely depicted in his own vocation, gentlemen, the canaler would make a fine dramatic hero. So abundantly and picturesquely wicked is he, like Mark Antony, for days and days along his green turf flowery Nile, he indolently floats, openly toying with his red-cheeked Cleopatra, ripening his apricot thigh upon the sunny deck. But ashore, all this effeminacy is dashed. The brigandish guise with which the caneller so proudly sports, his slouched and gaily ribbed hat betoken his grand features, a terror to the smiling innocence of the villages through which he floats. His visage and bold swagger are not unshunned in cities. Once a vagabond on his own canal. I have received good turns for one of these canellas. I thank him heartily. Would fain be not ungrateful. But it is often one of the prime redeeming qualities of your man of violence that at times he has as stiff an arm to back a poor stranger in a strait as to plunder a wealthy one. In sum, gentlemen, what the wildness of this canal life is emphatically evinced by this: that our wild whale fishery contains so many of its most finished graduates, and that scarce any race of mankind, except Sydney men, are so much distrusted by our whaling captains. Nor does it at all diminish the curiousness of this matter, that too many thousands of our royal boys and young men born along its line, the probationary life of the Grand Canal finishes the sole transition between quietly reaping in a Christian cornfield and recklessly plowing the waters of the most barbaric seas.
I see.
Impetuously exclaimed Don Pedro, spilling his cha-cha upon his silvery ruffles.
No need to travel. The world's one, Lima. I had thought now that at your temperate north the generations were cold and holy as the hills. But the story!
I left off, gentlemen, where the lakeman shook the backstay. Hardly had he done so when he was surrounded by 3 junior mates and 4 harpooneers, who all crowded him to the deck. But, sliding down the ropes like baleful comets, the 2 cannellers rushed into the uproar and sought to drag their man out of it toward the forecastle. Others of the sailors joined with them in the attempt, and a twisted turmoil ensued. While standing out of harm's way, the valiant captain danced up and down with a whale pike, calling upon his officers to manhandle that atrocious scoundrel and smoke him along to the quarter-deck. At intervals, he ran close up to the revolving border of the confusion, and prying into the heart of it with his pike, sought to prick out the object of his resentment. But Steelkilt and his desperadoes were too much for them all. They succeeded in gaining the forecastle deck, where, hastily slewing about 3 or 4 large casks in a line with the windlass, these sea Parisians entrenched themselves behind the barricade.
Come out of that, ye pirates!
Roared the captain, now menacing them with a pistol in each hand, just brought to him by the steward.
Come out of it, ye cutthroats!
Steelkilt leapt on the barricade and, striding up and down there, defied the worst the pistols could do, but gave the captain to understand distinctly that his, Steelkilt's, death would be the signal for a murderous mutiny on the part of all hands. Fearing in his heart lest this might prove but too true, the captain a little desisted, but still commanded the insurgents instantly to return to their duty.
Will you promise not to touch us if we do?
Demanded their ringleader.
Turn to, I make no promise. To your duty. Do you want to sink a ship by knocking off at a time like this? Turn to!
And he once more raised a pistol.
Oh, sink the ship, let her sink!
Cried Steelkilt.
Not a man of us turns to unless you swear not to raise a rope yarn against us. What say ye, men?
Turning to his comrades, a fierce cheer was their response. The lakemen now patrolled the barricade, all while keeping his eye on the captain and jerking out such sentences as these.
It's not our fault. We didn't want it. I told him to take his hammer away. It was a boy's business. He might have known me before this. I told him not to prick the buffalo. I believe I have broken a finger there against his accursed jaw. Ain't those mincing knives down in the forecastle there, men? Look to those handspikes, my hearties. Captain, by God, look to yourself. Say the word. Don't be a fool. Forget it all. We are ready to turn to. Treat us decently, and we're your men. But we won't be flogged. Turn to!
Roared the captain. Steelkilt glanced round him a moment and then said,
I tell you what it is now, Captain. Rather than kill ye and be hung for such a shabby rascal, we won't lift a hand against ye unless ye attack us. But till ye say a word about not flogging us, we won't do a hand's turn. Down into the forecastle, then. Down with ye! I'll keep ye there till you're sick of it. Down ye go. Shall we?
cried the ringleader to his men. Most of them were against it, but at length, in obedience to Steelkilt, they preceded him down into their dark den, growlingly disappearing, like bears, into a cave. As the lakeman's bare head was just level with the planks, the captain and his posse leapt the barricade, and rapidly drawing over the side of the scuttle, planted their group of hands upon it, and loudly called for the steward to bring the heavy brass padlock belonging to the companionway. Then, opening the slide a little, the captain whispered something down the crack, closed it, and turned the key upon them, 10 in number, leaving on deck 20 or more, who, thus far, had remained neutral. All night, a wide-awake watch was kept by all the officers, forward and aft, and especially about the forecastle scuttle and fore hatchway, at which place it was feared the insurgent might emerge after breaking through the bulkhead below. But the hours of darkness passed in peace. The men who still remained at their duty, toiling hard at the pumps, whose clinking and clanging at intervals through the dreary night dismally resounded through the ship. So that's something to note here. Okay, like, let's talk about where we are in the story, because normally a ship with 30-something crew could maybe lose 10 of them, because at any given time, 10 guys are asleep anyway, right? So, you know, what the heck is happening? I keep losing all these chunks. So, it's not great to have your guys all of a sudden working double shifts or working shifts and a half. But, like, going from 30 to 20 crew, if everybody pitches in and works a little bit longer, it's theoretically doable. But the problem is they're already using all of their extra energy on pumping out the extra water from the hold, which is where all this started, right? And the strongest guys who were helping with that, a lot of them just backed our boy Steel Killed here, right? So the captain's actually not in a great position of power here, because he might have been able to get by with 20 out of 30 men on a normal day. But they are frantically making way towards shore because they are sinking if they don't run these pumps. And there's no... the mechanical pumps are pumped by hand. It's hard work. Chuck Plays Game says, why is your face so huge? Oh, the camera gets bigger when people hit tipping milestones. We're currently $6 away from the next tipping milestone, as you can see from my abacus here, Chuck. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/Joe Hills and YouTube Super Chat. So, like all this stuff about the pumps, it's like, earlier that was kind of like, okay, here's the setup for why the guys are tired and stressed out or whatever. But now, the crisis is at hand. Because even if the captain doesn't have a mutiny, even if these guys don't try to take over the ship, if they just refuse to work or are imprisoned, everybody else stuck working those pumps is having a bad time. Because they're doing their normal jobs more than usual, and they're hand pumping out a bunch of water from the hold on a sinking ship that's not especially close to shore. And so what that does for the morale of the remaining seamen is not going to be great either. This captain is in a really bad place here. I understand why he doesn't want to, like, immediately forgive somebody for striking one of his mates. And specifically, like, the first mate. But, like, Radley was way out of line. I don't think there's no justification for Radley's action here. And the captain backing Radley over Steel Killed here is one of those things like, okay, maybe it happens because you didn't see what happened leading up to it. Somebody just struck the first mate. Hey, that guy's in trouble. It's been overnight. The captain has had a chance to ask people what happened. Does he stick to his guns? Or does he try to make peace? This is actually a genuinely really compelling story within a story. And I'm kind of summarizing it a little bit for the people who are joining us late. But, like, it's really neat to see how Melville structured this, right? He does have 2 guns, says Elodie. Yeah, the store did bring those up earlier. Okay. So, here we go. Let's see. Chuck Plays Game says, it's fun to see Hermitcraft YouTube videos and go back and watch a stream and realize most of what the hermits do is an insane amount of grinding. Ah, okay, I turned off mob sounds, and that's been a problem. There we go. Ta-da. Okay. Let's try and get some sunlight down in here as well. That'll discourage some of the spawning, at least. Not all of it, apparently. Oh, come on! Well, at least he took out the other one. Okay. So, the next line opens with, at sunrise, the captain went forward. So, let's see what the captain does. We don't know what the captain did overnight. We don't know how he spent his time. We're about to learn if this guy is a good captain or a bad captain. At sunrise, the captain went forward and, knocking on the deck, summoned the prisoners to work. But, with a yell, they refused. Water was then lowered to them, and a couple handfuls of biscuit were tossed after it, when again turning the key upon them and pocketing it, the captain returned to the quarter-deck. Twice every day, for 3 days, this was repeated. But on the fourth morning, a confused wrangling, and then a scuffling was heard. As the customary summons was delivered, and suddenly 4 men burst up from the forecastle, saying they were ready to turn to. The fetid closeness of the air and a famishing diet, united perhaps to some fears of ultimate retribution, had constrained them to surrender at discretion. Emboldened by this, the captain reiterated his demand to the rest, but Steelkit shouted up to him a terrific hint to stop his babbling and betake himself where he belonged. On the 5th morning, 3 other mutineers bolted up into the air from the desperate arms below that sought to restrain them. Only 3 were left. "Better turn to now," said the captain with a heartless jeer.
"Shut us up again, will ye?"
cried Steelkilt. "Oh, certainly," said the captain, and the key clicked. It was at this point, gentlemen, that enraged by the defection of 7 of his former associates, and stung by the mocking voice that had last held him, and maddened by his long entombment in a place as black as the bowels of despair, it was then that Steelkit proposed to the 2 canallers, thus apparently of one mind with him, to burst out of their hole at the next summoning of the garrison, and, armed with their keen mincing knives, long, crescentic, heavy implements, with a handle at each end, run amok from the bowsprit to the taffrail, and if by any devilishness of desperation possible, seize the ship. For himself, he would do this, he said, whether they joined him or not. That was the last night he should spend in that den. But the scheme met with no opposition on the part of the other 2. They swore that they were ready for that, or for any other mad thing, for anything short of a surrender. And what was more, they each insisted on being the first man on the deck when the time to make the rush should come. But to this their leader fiercely objected, reserving that priority for himself, particularly as his 2 comrades would not yield the one to the other in the matter, and both of them could not be the first, for the latter would but admit 1 man at a time. And here, gentlemen, the foul play of the miscreants must come out. Upon hearing the frantic project of their leader, each in his own separate soul suddenly lighted, it would seem, upon the same piece of treachery, namely, to be the foremost in breaking out, in order to be the first of the 3, though the last of 10, to surrender, and thereby secure whatever small chance of pardon such conduct might merit. But when Steelkit made known his determination still to lead them to the last, they, in some way, by some subtle chemistry of villainy, mixed their before secret treacheries together, and, when their leader fell into a doze, verbally opened their souls to each other in 3 sentences, and bound the sleeper with cords, and gagged him with cords, and shrieked out for the captain at midnight. Thinking murder at hand, and smelling in the dark for blood, he and all his armed mates and harpooneers rushed for the forecastle. In a few minutes the scuttle was opened, and bound hand and foot, the still struggling ringleader was shoved up into the air by his perfidious allies, who at once claimed the honor of securing a man who had been fully ripe for murder. But all these were collared and dragged along the deck like dead cattle, and side by side was seized up into the mizzen rigging like 3/4 of meat, and there they hung until morning.
Damn ye!
Cried the captain, pacing to and fro before them.
The vultures would not touch ye, villains.
At sunrise, he summoned all hands, separating those who had rebelled from those who had taken no part in the mutiny, and he told the former that he had a good mind to flog them all round, though thought upon the whole he would do so. He ought to. Justice demanded it. But for the present, considering their timely surrender, he would let them go without reprimand, which he accordingly administered in the vernacular.
But as for you common carrion rogues,
Turning to the 3 men in the rigging,
for you I mean to mince you up for the trypots.
and seizing a rope, he applied it with all his might to the backs of the 2 traitors, till they yelled no more, but lifelessly hung their heads sideways, as the 2 crucified thieves are drawn.
My wrist's sprained with ye,
He cried at last, but
there is still a rope enough left for ye, my fine bantam, that wouldn't give up. Take that gag from his mouth, and let us hear what he can say for himself.
for a moment, the exhausted mutineer made a tremulous motion of his cramped jaws, and then, painfully twisting round his head, said in a sort of hiss,
What I say is this, and mind it well. If you shall flog me, I murder you. See ye so? Then see how ye frighten me.
and the captain drew off with the rope to strike.
Best not.
Hissed the lake man,
But I must.
and the rope was once more drawn back for the stroke. Still Kiltier hissed out something, inaudible to all but the captain, who, to the amazement of all hands, started back. Paced the deck rapidly 2 or 3 times, and then suddenly, throwing down his rope, said,
I won't do it. Let him go. Cut him down, do you hear?
But as the junior mates were hurrying to execute the order, Radney, the chief mate, as the junior mates were hurrying to execute the order, a pale man with a bandaged head arrested them. Radney, the chief mate, ever since the blow he had lain in his berth. But that morning, hearing the tumult out on deck, he had crept out, and thus far had watched the whole scene. Such was the state of his mouth that he could hardly speak, but mumbling about something about his being willing to be able to do what the captain dared not attempt, he snatched the rope and advanced to the pinioned foe.
"You're cowards,"
hissed the lakeman.
But take up.
The mate was in the very act of striking when another hiss stayed his uplifted arm. He paused, and then, pausing no more, made good his word. Spite of Steelkit's threat, whatever that may have been. The 3 men were then cut down, all hands were turned to, and sullenly worked by the moody seamen. The iron pumps clanged as before. Just after dark that day, when one watch had retired below, a clamor was heard in the forecastle, and 2 trembling traders, running up, besieged the cabin door, saying they durst not consort with the crew. Entreaties, cuffs, and kicks could not drive them back, so at their own instance they were put down into the ship's run for salvation. Still, no sign of mutiny reappeared among the rest. On the contrary, it seemed that, mainly at Steelkilt's instigation, they had resolved to maintain the strictest peacefulness, obey all orders to the last, and, when the ship reached port, desert her in a body. But in order to ensure the speediest end to the voyage, they all agreed to another thing, namely, not to sing out for whales, in case any should be discovered.
Oh no. I don't know if you guys... Oh no. Oh no.
This is about to get really bad, you guys. I don't know what he said, Elodie, but I think he might have hinted at the captain something about this. The whole crew deserting and not singing out for whales is 2 different problems. Leslie, thank you for tipping 10, who says, "Happy wedding, Joe. Thanks for the Central Standard Time stream." Thank you so much. That gets us $4 past our next face camera expansion milestone. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/Joe Hills and YouTube Super Chat. Let's go ahead and get that face camera expansion in now. Expand Jost. Do. Lowering that Joe Pasty now to 42%. This is basically a whole short story. Like, I think Melville had this short story he sent a magazine editor, and the magazine editor didn't publish it. And he's like, "That's fine, I'll put it in my novel. Let's go. It's gonna be the most famous novel of all time." Just you wait. Just you wait. Seriously, like, this is a bonkers chapter in a bonkers book. Everything we've read this far has been way the heck out in Pearl. But this one... Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm taking another sip of my drink. Okay. That's empty. How much do we have left? Okay, I need to take a hydration break so I can finish this chapter, but we can't do music. So everybody sing to yourselves. I'm gonna go as quick as I can. Where's the hydration break sign? I'm the gingerbread man. I'm not the gingerbread man. Don't draw me as a... Somebody posted on Reddit, how do the hermits not want to be drawn? And I feel like in general, people should draw us however they want. But if you draw me as a gingerbread man, I will know that you watched this stream and just were a jerk. I'm actually fine with it either way. There's a bug on the microphone stand. Oh my gosh. We had so many bugs lately. Hydration break sign, BRB. Okay, I'm back. Let's take down that hydration break sign. This has been a whole thing. This chapter, this is like I did not. I read this book 5 years ago, and I did not remember this chapter. And I'm reading this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I block this out? Like, this is a whole thing. We're wildly off track. Thank you, Stephanie Hall. I appreciate it. Excuse me. Okay. So, let's go ahead and swap out for a new pick. This is going to be this is the last break before we finish up this story. We're into the oh my gosh. I can't even make up things at this point. I feel like there's a word for this. Like where you're in the home stretch. Yeah, we're in the home stretch here, people. I've got an increasing sense of dread that's deeply uncomfortable. So I feel like Melville's doing a great job with this part of the story. Let's find out how great. Just after dark that day, when one watch had retired below, a clamor was heard in the forecastle. The two trembling traders running up besieged the cabin door, saying they durst not consort with the crew. Entreaties, cuffs, and kicks could not drive them back, so at their own instance they were put down in the ship's run for salvation. Still no sign of mutiny reappeared among the rest. On the contrary, it seemed that, mainly at Steelkiln's instigation, they had resolved to maintain the strictest peacefulness, obey all orders to the last, and, when the ship reached port, desert her in a body. But in order to ensure the speediest end to the voyage, they all agreed to one other thing, namely, to not sing out for whales, in case any should be discovered. For, spite of her leak, and spite of all her other perils, the town host still maintained her mastheads, and her captain was just as willing to lower for a fish at that moment as on the day his craft first struck the cruising ground. And Radney the mate was quite as ready to change his berth for a boat, and with his bandaged mouth seek to gag in death the vital jaw of the whale. But though the lakeman had induced the seamen to adopt this sort of passiveness in their conduct, he kept his own counsel, at least till all was over, concerning his own proper and private revenge upon the man who had stung him in the ventricles of his heart. he was in Radney, the chief mate's watch, and as if the infatuated man sought to run more than half way to meet his doom, after the scene at the rigging, he insisted, against the express counsel of the captain, upon resuming the head of his watch at night. Upon this, and one or two other circumstances, Steelkilt systematically built the plan of his revenge. During the night, Radney had an unseamanlike way of sitting on the bulwarks of the quarterdeck and leaning his arm upon the gunwale of the boat, which was hoisted up there, a little above the ship's side. In this attitude, it was well known, he sometimes dozed. There was a considerable vacancy between the boat and the ship, and down between this was the sea. Steelkilt calculated his time and found that his next trick at the helm would come round at 2 o'clock in the morning on the third day from that in which he had been betrayed. At his leisure, he employed the interval in braiding something very carefully in his watches below.
Oi, what are you making there?
Said a shipmate.
What do you think? What does it look like? Oi, like a lanyard for your bag, but an odd one, it seems to me. Ah, yes, rather oddish,
Said the lake man, holding it up at arm's length before him.
but I think it will answer. Shipmate, I haven't enough twine. Have you any?
But there was none in the forecastle.
Then I must get some from old Rad.
And he rose to go aft.
You don't mean to go back in the ham?
Said a sailor.
Why not? Do you think he won't do me a turn when it's to help himself in the end, shipmate?
And, going to the mate, he looked at him quietly and asked him for some twine to mend his hammock. It was given him. Neither twine nor lanyard were seen again, but the next night an iron ball, closely netted, partly rolled from the pocket of the lakeman's monkey jacket, as he was tucking the coat into his hammock for a pillow. 24 hours after, his trick at the silent helm. Nigh to the man who was apt to doze over, the grave was already dug to the seaman's hand. That fatal hour was then to come, and in the foreordaining soul of Steelkilt, the mate was already stark and stretched as a corpse, with his forehead crushed in. But, gentlemen, a fool saved the would-be murderer from the bloody deed he had planned. Yet complete revenge he had, and without being the avenger, for, by a mysterious fatality, heaven itself seemed to step in, to take out of his hands and into its own the damning thing he would have done. It was just between daybreak and sunrise of the morning of the second day, when they were washing down the decks, that a stupid Tenerife man, drawing water in the mains chains, all at once shouted out,
There she rolls! There she rolls! Jesus, what a whale! It was Moby Dick! Moby Dick?
cried Don Sebastian.
St. Dominic, Sir Celia. Do whales have christenings? Whom call you Moby Dick?
A very white and most deadly immortal monster, Don. But that would be too long a story.
How? How?
cried all the young Spaniards crowding. Nay, Dons, nay, I cannot rehearse that now. Let me get more into the answers,
The teacher! The teacher!
cried Don Pedro.
Our vigorous friend looks faint. Fill up the empty glass.
No need, gentlemen. One moment. One moment. One moment. One moment. And I proceed. Now, gentlemen, so suddenly perceiving the snowy whale within 50 yards of the ship, forgetful of the compact among the crew, in the excitement of the moment, the Tenerife man had instinctively and involuntarily lifted his voice for the monster, though for some little time past it had been plainly beheld from the 3 sullen mastheads. All was now a frenzy.
The white whale! The white whale!
Was the cry from captains, mates, and harpooneers, who, undeterred by fearful rumors, were all anxious to capture so famous and so precious a fish, while the dogged crew eyed askance, and with curses, the appalling beauty of the vast milky mass that, lit up by a horizontal spangling sun, shifted and glistened like a living opal in the blue morning sea. Gentlemen, a strange fatality pervades the whole career of these events, as if verily mapped out before the world itself were charted. The mutineer was the bowman of the mate, and when fast to a fish, it was his duty to sit next to him, while Radney stood up with his lance in the prow, and haul in or slacken the line at the word of command. Moreover, when the 4 boats were lowered, the mates got the start, and none howled more fiercely with delight than did Steelkilt, as he strained at his oar. After a stiff pull, the harpooneers got fast, and, spear in hand, Radney sprang to the bow. He was always a furious man, it seems, in a boat, and now his bandaged cry was to beach him on the whale's topmost back. Nothing loath, his bowman hauled him up and up through a blinding foam that blent 2 whitenesses together, till of a sudden the boat struck against a sunken ledge, and keeling over, spilled out the standing mate. That instant, as he fell onto the whale's slippery back, the boat righted and was dashed aside by the swell, while Radney was tossed over into the sea on the other flank of the whale. He struck out through the spray, and for an instant was dimly seen through that veil, wildly seeking to remove himself from the eye of Moby Dick. But the whale rushed round in a sudden maelstrom, seized the swimmer between his jaws, and, rearing high up with him, plunged headlong again, and went down. Meantime, at the first tap of the boat's bottom, the lakeman had slackened the line so as to drop astern from the whirlpool. Calmly looking on, he thought his own thoughts. But a sudden, terrific downward jerking of the line quickly brought a knife. But a sudden, terrific downward jerking of the boat quickly brought his knife to the line. He cut it, and the whale was free. But at some distance, Moby Dick rose again, with some tatters of Radney's red woolen shirt, caught in his teeth that had destroyed him. All 4 boats gave chase again, but the whale eluded them, and finally wholly disappeared. In good time, the town-ho reached her port, a savage, solitary place where no civilized creature resided. There, headed by the lakemen, all but 5 or 6 of the foremast men deliberately deserted among the palms. Eventually, it turned out, seizing a large double war canoe of the savages and setting sail for some other harbor. The ship's company reduced to but a handful. The captain called upon the islanders to assist him in the laborious business of heaving down the ship to stop the leak. But to such unresting vigilance over their dangerous allies was this small band of officers necessitated both by day and night, and so extreme was the hard work they underwent that upon the vessel being ready again for sea, they were in such a weakened condition that the captain durst not put off with them in so heavy a vessel. After taking counsel with his officers, he anchored the ship as far offshore as possible, loaded and ran out his 2 cannon from the bows, stacked his muskets on the poop, and, warning the islanders not to approach the ship at their peril, took 1 man with him. Setting the sail of his best whaleboat, steered straight into the wind for Tahiti, 500 miles distant, to procure a reinforcement for his crew. On the 4th day of the sail, a large canoe was descried, which seemed to have touched a low isle of the corals. He steered away from it, but the savage craft bore down on him, and soon the voice of Steelkilt hailed him to heave to, or he would run him underwater. The captain presented a pistol. With 1 foot on each prow of the yoked war canoes, the lakeman laughed him to scorn, assuring him that if the pistol so much as clicked in the lock, he would bury him in bubbles and foam.
What do you want of me?
Cried the captain.
Where are you bound? And for what are you bound?
Demanded Steelkilt.
And no lies.
I am bound to Tahiti for more men.
Very good. Let me board you a moment. I come in peace.
With that, he leapt from the canoe, swam to the boat, and, climbing the gunwale, stood face to face with the captain.
Cross your arms, sir. Throw back your head. Now, repeat after me. As soon as Steelkilt leaves me, I swear to beach this boat on yonder island and remain there 6 days, and if I do not, may lightning strike me. A pretty scholar, laughed the lakeman.
Laughed the lakeman.
Adios, senor.
And, leaping back into the sea, he swam back to his comrades. Watching the boat till it was fairly breached and drawn up to the roots of the cocoa nut trees, Steelkilt made sail again, and in due time arrived at Tahiti, his own place of destination. There, luck befriended him. 2 ships were about to sail for France, and were providentially in want of precisely the number of men which the sailor headed. They embarked, and so forever got the start on their former captain, had he been at all minded to work them legal retribution. Some 10 days after the French ships sailed, the whaleboat arrived, and the captain was forced to enlist some of the more civilized Tahitians, who had been somewhat used to the sea. Chartering a small native schooner, he returned with them to his vessel, and finding all right there, again resumed his cruisings. Where Steelkilt is now, gentlemen, none know. But upon the island of Nantucket, the widow of Radley still turns to the sea, which refuses to give up its dead. Still in dreams, sees the awful white whale that destroyed him.
Are you through?
Said Don Sebastian quietly. I am, Don.
Then I entreat you, tell me if to the best of your own convictions, this, your story is in substance, really true. It is so passing wonderful. Did you get it from an unquestionable source? Bear with me if I seem to press.
Also, bear with all of us, sailor, for we join in Sir Don Sebastian's suit, cried the company, with exceeding interest. Is there a copy of the Holy Evangelists in the Golden Inn, gentlemen?
Nay,
said Don Sebastian, but I know...
nay,
said Don Sebastian,
but I know a worthy priest nearby, who will quickly procure one for me. I go for it, but are you well advised? This may grow too serious.
will you be so good as to bring the priest also, Don?
Though there are no auto de fe in Lima now,
said one of the company to another.
I fear our sailor friend runs risk of the archiepiscopacy. Let us withdraw more out of moonlight. I see no need of this.
Excuse me for running after you, Don Sebastian, but may I also beg you will be particular in procuring the largest sized evangelists you can?
This is the priest. He brings you the evangelists,
said Don Sebastian gravely, returning with a tall and solemn figure. Let me remove my hat. Now, venerable priest, further into the light, and hold the holy book before me, that I may touch it. So help me heaven, and on my honor, the story I have told ye, gentlemen, is in substance and in its great items true. I know it to be true. It happened on this ball. I trod on the ship. I knew the crew. I have seen and talked with Steelkilt since the death of Radney. And thus concludes Chapter 54 of Moby Dick, or The Whale, by Herman Melville. Centauratron writes, "Wow, what a chapter!" And Elodie says, "Not gonna lie, I think Steelkilt just killed that dude and made up a Moby Dick story for cover." Any other thoughts? I will say, even though I read this book 5 years ago, I had completely forgotten about this chapter when I was selecting it. This chapter did not factor into my choices at all, but this is like a wildly good chapter, right? Like we're building the mythos of Moby Dick. We're talking a little bit about Ahab and his customs at the beginning. That has a value. But like, this is like I said, I really wonder if this was just like Melville had this whole story written for a magazine and they didn't approve it. And he's like, screw you, I'm putting it in my book. But also, though, this is also the only time we actually see Ishmael telling a story at a party, which is kind of the frame structure for the whole book. We are like so deep into the frame structure now. Like what even is this anymore? But also, can we trust Ishmael when he talks about how he was so popular at a party they had to go get a priest and some really big evangelists, which might have been because Ishmael was about to flirt with them. Who can say? Am Best Bear writes, "This was my favorite chapter when I read the book. Hearing you read it and your thoughts on it is even better." Thank you, Am Best Bear. Chloe the Great and Powerful says, "Woohoo! That was a long one. Bravo." I glad. So the thing is, I normally would never want to break up a stream, or I don't want to break up a chapter by ending the stream. I would always have a chapter be complete. But like if we were gonna end a chapter if we were gonna end the stream in the middle of a chapter, I wouldn't want it to be before I'm about to go on honeymoon and take a bunch of time off. So if y'all are just joining us, if you haven't seen a stream for a long time, I am taking time off for my honeymoon the second week in September. But I'm also not going to be streaming next Saturday because of wedding-related stuff. There's a lot of wedding-related stuff before the honeymoon, and so I can't work, and so I have to take time off. But as a self-employed person, I don't get paid vacation time. I just have to, like, burn through my savings. And so anything that y'all want to give to help me burn through my savings with less panic would be deeply appreciated. Tips are welcome via paypal.me/JoeHills and YouTube Super Chat. Last call for tips for the night. What a chapter. What a chapter. Wow. I'm really happy to go out on a strong chapter like that before the 2-week or break or whatever. I don't know. It might not be we're skipping next Saturday. That counts as we'll make it work. I should be back the Saturday after, but with any sort of travel for like the honeymoon and stuff like that, there's always a chance that something goes sideways. So it could be a 2-week break. I don't want to overpromise. Oh my gosh. Minecraft is a good video game. I've had a lot of fun. I feel like I'm getting a lot done here with this mining thing too. I don't know if you guys noticed, I'm also playing Minecraft. It's hard to tell sometimes because my eye gets big. But we're having a fun time. Okay. I feel like I didn't get much done, but like I'm sure when I look at the replay mod, it'll be like, no, that was like a bunch of blocks. Option statistics, items. 1.577. Not bad. Bum, 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 bum. So normally we'd wrap up around 10:30. So we are going to wrap up soon, but I'm giving you a few minutes for the tips to roll in. Let's do a hard refresh of the PayPal. Hey, it looks like one just came in from Marshall. Thank you so much, Marshall, who says, enjoy the honeymoon and tips 100. I appreciate your generosity. This is truly a really impactful time for support. So I really appreciate it. This isn't just like, oh boy, it'd be nice to have some extra savings for a rainy day. This is like, I'm going to skip a lot of work. So thank you very much, Marshall, for that extra 100. Here we go. Expand. Jost. Do. And we're going to find my eyeball and lower the opacity now to 32%. And then we got 4 more to go. Numero dos, even larger Joe. Da. I'm very keen on showing up for work. I think that's one of the things that makes me a good artist. Like, I make a lot of stuff because I show up for work. But, like, I feel like getting married is an excuse. That was numero dos. Here's numero tres. Expand my face. I feel like getting married is one of those things where it's like, I owe it to my fiance and myself to just say, nope, not showing up for work today. So here we go. Expand Joe. Do. Lowering the Joe passing out to 20%. 1, 2, 3, 4. How about we expand some more? Another thing, I always take Labor Day off, so I'm not streaming on Labor Day. Or if I do, I stream something so wildly not commercially viable. It's like, I'm not going to make any money doing this. This is just for fun. But yeah, I want to respect those folks who did hard work in the labor movement to get us decent rights. Lowering the Joe Pass now to 16%. And each Nissan she go, go, go. Thank you very much, Marshall, once again. Here we go. It's time to expand Jost. Ba-da-da-da. Once I find my face, we're going to lower the Joe opacity. Where is that eyeball? Ba-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da. There it is. Lowering the Joe opacity now to 12%. There's a stupid bug that keeps landing on my monitors. Okay, sorry. If I keep thwacking the monitor, that's why. Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Marshall. I really appreciate it. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to load up twitch.tv/directory/following. Are there any cool pinball streamers? Oh my gosh. We're going to log out in Minecraft because I need to not die. Sorry, I'm not doing a quick job of this. You know what? Okay, this isn't pinball, but Evil Notion raided us the other night, and I figure we should return the favor. So we're gonna /raid Evil Notion, playing Jackbox Party Pack. When you get over there, our raid message is "Howdy y'all, Joe Hill's raid here." Please go ahead, pop in, say some kind words. Y'all, this has been an amazing chapter. I'm so glad we did this. This was a great time. And yeah, so next Saturday, no stream. You can always go to joehills.net/soon for the most up-to-date schedule, which isn't always 100% accurate, but I really try. I really try to keep it accurate. So yeah, you'll see that next week and the week after are kind of light. We have a stream tomorrow night for sure. Monday and Tuesday I'm going to figure out. Definitely no streams Friday and Saturday. And then, yeah. So Friday the 6th through Friday the 13th. Absolutely no streams. Other stuff, we might do some bonus streams or whatever, but that's like the completely dead zone. So thank y'all so much. Once again, go be kind to Evil Notion. Say howdy y'all, Joe Hills right here. Anyway, until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring. Stop streaming. Stop in the stream. I need to make the stream stop, please. Did that do it?